went to a pawn shop to cash a check. All right, I guess in the black communities, you might not have a bank account. You've been so oppressed, and the white man has been so mean to you that he's prevented you from opening a bank account. Maybe you don't have identification because the white man puts places to get ID so far from your homes. Regardless of what that was, she had to cash a check at a pawn shop. I can't imagine these pawn shops having to go through the rigmarole that it would take to verify a check that someone is bringing into a pawn shop to cash. The verification process has to be insane. And that's why these dummies that go in with, it's an obviously a fake check. What do they think? The guy behind the counter is just going to be like, okay, cha-ching, let me get that for you. No, these guys, like banks, the majority of people banks deal with are legitimate. They have real checks and they deposit them or they cash them against their accounts. So all day they're dealing with legitimate people and legitimate checks. So if you go to a bank with a fake check, I think initially they're probably going to take it for granted that it's real and then go through the process and find out it's fake. Now, I would assume a pawn shop is exactly the opposite. Everyone that comes into a pawn shop to cash a check is a liar with a fake check. And then they have to prove it's real before they give the money out. So I don't think a pawn shop is a good place to take a counterfeit check. But again, you're not dealing with the most brilliant of people here. Is that her? Yeah, that's her. That's her, all right. Play a little bit of her and this. It's brilliant.
I had received a check in the mail, and it was supposed to be a payback out from my back pay.
For what?
Unemployment.
Unemployment check.
For almost $24,000?
For $24,000.
Were you expecting a check at all?
I knew I was supposed to be getting a check, but I didn't think it was supposed to be that much.
Okay.
We have a woman in Florida trying to cash a fraudulent check for $20,000.
Well, that's her anyway. I'll just explain what it is. That's her. Of course it is. She goes into a pawn shop to cash a $24,000 check. I mean, first of all, they don't even have that kind of cash on hand, I'm sure. Secondly, you don't think they're really going to check this out and make sure everything is hunky-dory before they fork over 24 large to some hood rat that just came in off the streets. And she's just sticking to her story. She tells the cop this is an unemployment check. And the cop's like, ma'am, I was on unemployment at one point in my life, younger, before he was an officer. And he's like, they don't just give you a lump sum of $24,000. You have to fill things out, and it's based on, you working for a job where you qualified for unemployment, and there's a record of everything. There are forms they give you. This woman showed up with a check that was in an envelope, a plain white envelope with a name and address on it. So it wasn't from any agency. It was a state check. It wasn't a check from unemployment. It was just a state check, like if you had gotten a state income tax refund, that type of check for $24,000. And the cop's saying this just doesn't make sense. When did you sign up for unemployment? And she goes, during COVID. So it was like 4 years ago that she had signed up for unemployment. And she has no recollection of what job it was that she was working with and then had gotten fired or laid off and signed up for unemployment. She doesn't know where she signed up for it. And then somehow 3 years later, 4 years later, she gets this miraculous check for $24,000, and then goes to cash it. By the way, this was the second time she had come back to the pawn shop, because the first time she didn't have ID. She had ID on her phone. She thought she was going to be able to cash a $24,000 check at a pawn shop with a photo of her license or something on her phone. And the guy's like, yeah, no. And then she left, went to DMV and got an ID. Not a license, just an ID, because her license was suspended. Of course it was. And in this interim, the pawn shop guy got right on the phone to the cops and said, I think we have a live one here. So the cops were waiting for her when she came back. And it's like I was saying before with You Can't Lie. The cop told her, he goes, I've been doing this for years. I have been part of this part of law enforcement for years now. We catch people that try to pass bad checks. He goes, let me tell you what happened. This isn't an unemployment check. You were approached by someone, whether on social media, a friend of a friend, probably a guy, and he said, he gave you this check and said, if you cash it, I will give you a portion of this and you give me the rest. Isn't that what happened? And she just stuck to her story. No. He goes, I've seen this. I deal with this all the time. So her amazingly concocted story about unemployment sending her $24,000 3 or 4 years after she had worked somewhere. Boy, while it was brilliant, it wasn't adding up to these cops. And I see these all the time. And it just doesn't work. Shoplifting, these cops deal with shoplifters all the time. And they sit him in the loss prevention office in the back of a Walmart or something. And the people just lie and lie. And the cops just go, what are you doing? I know what you're doing. You stole this. I didn't steal nothing. I was scanning the stuff. I have the receipt. I was going to pay for it. And they hear it every day. So you're not very good at it, Jussie. So Jussie lied, and I guess through a technicality, he's not going to have to go through the system on this one. His conviction was thrown out, and there you are. But he's still got a reputation of being a lying, race-baiting asshole. So good for him. In New York, they have a wonderful district attorney named Alvin Bragg. Alvin Bragg, black gentleman.